Welcome to USCFootball.com, Tunnel Vision Peristyle Podcast. I don't really know. We're in a bunch of places at once. I am your host, Chris Trevino, and we're doing something a little special here. Well, new for spring football. We're doing some positional preview podcasts, live casts, video casts, YouTube. I don't know. We're in a bunch of different places. I am joined here by the one and only Connor Triple Double. Connor, how you doing?
Doing well, Chris. Excited to break down these groups position by position. Let's do it.
We are going to make these pretty quick. These are not to be 2-hour plus breakdowns of each position. These are designed to be quick and digestible and just something you can listen to get a quick kind of surface level overview of what's going on position by position. So Connor, today we are going to start with offense, and we love offense, put up points. People love it. Defense is going to be later in the week, but today, Connor, I think we're going to start with the quarterbacks, one of the most important positions in any position of sports, the king position. And we have different sections we're going to go through, and these are designed not to be more than 45 minutes. That is the end goal. If it's over, we have to give you money. So that's the rule. So Connor, let's start with quarterbacks. I have my little list here. We have our sheets. We have our data. Let's jump into it. So for you, when I say USC quarterbacks 2025, what are those quick first impressions?
The first impression for me, the upside is definitely there with this room. I see it. I see Jayden Maiava's ceiling. I see Hassan Longstreet's ceiling. But the underlying question going into the spring, when that spring portal window opens, if USC has a chance to upgrade the position, will they? It's a very interesting spot to be in, where I felt like Jayden Maiava, for all of his flaws, made some really nice plays last season, had a really good year in the win column, leading USC to a 3-1 record at the end of the season. His lows were low, but there's upside there. I like the room, but I'm a little afraid to say, like, I'm all in on Maiava and they're going to have this awesome season, when there's a real chance that if a good quarterback enters in the spring in the portal, maybe USC would try to upgrade. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this group. Maybe we can start there.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with you. Like, I believe in the skill set of Jayden Maiava, but I'm also a little scared of it. You know, you're kind of straddling that line as like, which way is it going to go? And it's obviously going to define what USC season is like in 2025 at the quarterback position. I think we're confident the defense will be much better, but what is the offense going to provide? So this is why we're starting with the quarterback position first, or our second topic, is looking at what is being lost from the quarterback room from 2024 and what is returning. Obviously, we'll get to Jayden because he's obviously the big returner, but you are losing Miller Moss, who was your starter for much of 2024 before the switch at the end to Jayden, and Jake Jensen, your number 3 quarterback, a guy who, had talent but just never saw the field. I think he had like 2 career snaps or something like that, 1 snap last season. He's now at Montana State competing for their starting job, and the Miller Moss obviously is off to Louisville. First off, Connor, just looking at the losses, anything stand out?
Well, Jake Jensen leaving, he didn't do a lot on the field, but I liked having him in the room. I feel like the coaching staff really enjoyed being around him, and he was a good Trojan in the sense of really just getting the younger guys prepared, and he just seemed like a good guy to have in the room. I'm happy that he's going for greener pastures and is trying to play. That's what I do if I was in his situation. Being a backup has its perks, but at the end of the day, you only have so much time in college football, so I don't blame him at all for trying to go out and play at Montana State. And then Miller Moss, with him leaving, I mean, the second he was benched, this was the realistic scenario for him. This was always going to happen, where he loses that starting job, and then he did wait so long. He didn't enter the portal until, after he lost the starting job, when he had many opportunities to do so when he was the backup to Caleb Williams. So that makes sense to me. And Maiava came in and played pretty well last season. Like I said, he did have some ups and downs, but USC went 3-1, which was a pretty solid winning percentage with him leading the charge. So he'll go into the season as the starter, replacing Moss. And I hope Miller has a solid year with Louisville. I like Jeff Braun, that coaching staff. They do a good job with quarterbacks, so it seems like he landed in a good spot.
Obviously, quarterback rooms in this day and age of college football is always tough to balance. You always have losses and incoming guys, and you're always looking what's out there with the transfer portal. So not a surprise to see, two transfers out. Miller Moss, one we saw all coming, the second he was benched, as you mentioned. And then Jake Jensen just wants to get an opportunity to play somewhere. Let's shift to the returner, obviously, redshirt junior, Jayden Maiava, who, as you know, if you don't, the quick crib notes on it, Miller Moss started the season. Jayden came in from UNLV, was the backup. A lot of talent there, but still need to learn the system. USC struggling to win games, pull out close games. Lincoln Riley decides to make a massive change, broken by triple-double right here, that move to Jayden at the end of the season. Ended up passing for a little over 1,200 yards, exactly 1,201 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, which is that big number you look at, 45 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, a 3-and-run record in his final 4 starts. But Connor, that was awfully close to being 2-2, except for that big comeback there at the end in the Las Vegas Bowl. Jayden Maiava, we project to be the starter. He is the guy right now that you have to beat, King of the Hill, if you want to start at quarterback for USC in 2025. And as you mentioned, we see the talent. I think a lot of people are super out on Jayden just off of that, how he ended the season, with those back-to-back pick sixes, in the Notre Dame game. And then the Las Vegas Bowl did not play particularly well for most of that game until, that rally, they come back. But I think that rally counts for something. And I remember us talking about that performance and what is moving ahead for Jayden in 2025 in USC's offense. Will they go get a quarterback? We're sitting here on the verge of spring, and they haven't gotten someone that screams he's going to take the position from Jayden Maiava. So from what we can see, Connor, this feels like it's Jayden's team still once again.
I agree with that, and there has been some conversation about the spring portal. I mentioned it off the top, but if you just look back at some of the impact quarterbacks who have transferred schools and had success, they've all done it before spring practice. I couldn't find one example in the last 3 years of any of the really talented signal callers who moved from school to school who did so after the spring. So it would be a precedent-setting move if USC does choose to go in another direction. But Chad Bowden, the new general manager, this spring portal is his first chance to really have say on the roster and make moves. So maybe because he's in there now, does that change things? It just seems like it just has never happened, and it's kind of crazy to think they might try to get a new quarterback because you don't have so much time. So I think it's more likely than not that Jayden Maiava is the starting quarterback for next season. And like I said, he has a lot of upside, and I really like what he was able to do last season for the most part. The issue is the turnovers, so you just hope that he can get that coached out of him. But, I'm just weary of saying he's 100% going to be the guy next season when I think there is a small chance if the stars align and something happens, USC could get a guy. But that would be a little bit crazy just because it hasn't happened before.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Never say never when it comes to the transfer portal in this day and age, and maybe they'll make a play. But yeah, it just feels the easiest path is to have Jayden be the guy. I wouldn't say easiest path, but the one that makes the most sense in terms of the easiest to kind of pull off. You have Jayden. You got to go in on Jayden and have him develop. I think that's just the big question with him is, will he get there in terms of a development standpoint? This has been a huge offseason for him, working with a quarterback coach. 11 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. That's kind of the garish number. You saw the great of Jayden Maiava. You saw the bad and you saw the ugly in those 4 starts that he has. The talent is there to be a winning quarterback. You saw what he did at UNLV. Despite those struggles, got them to a conference championship game. 6'4", rocket arm, can move, is mobile, fits what Lincoln Riley's system pairs best with. It's all there on paper. Now it's just to have the development with Jayden. And if that happens, USC could be a pretty dang good team. But again, that's kind of the big question mark that's hanging over the head of Jayden and that quarterback room.
I said weary earlier. I meant wary. I am a little weary. Yeah, so with Jayden, I think, Chris, the fact that now he has this second offseason with Lincoln Riley, that will make a big difference. And he is a younger guy. He's not crazy young. He was at UNLV for 2 years, and this will be his second year at USC. Eligibility-wise, he could come back for 2026 if he wanted to. So he's not going into his last season of college potentially. If he is in his last season of college, that would mean things go really well for him. But I think that another year of off-season training with Lincoln Riley in spring camp and then in fall camp, the strength program, just watching film with all these coaches, I think that could really help a guy like Maiava, who the talent is there. He has so much raw ability. He can move. He has a huge arm. What he was able to do, like his plus plays last year, were awesome. So maybe one more offseason of development can get him there, and I think that's a legitimate possibility.
Yeah, and just being around the team more in the capacity of being QB1. He was kind of thrown into that scenario, and that's kind of, you're getting the feel of being the guy in the huddle and being the guy in practice leading the way and out of the tunnel. I still think that took some time to get used to because he was a new teammate for the most part as a transfer. But now the whole offseason, he's been building with these guys. We'll see what it looks like. Put up some big plays with some of those receivers that they have in the stable there. So I think it's going to work better. But to get it to that level that USC fans want, there has to be a big sense of development from Jayden Maiava in 2025. And we're going to see. Spring will be the first test of that, and that's going to be a fun room to watch. But let's move to the new faces because, as we talked about, 2 guys going out, 2 guys coming in. You have the redshirt senior Sam Heward from Utah, by also way of Cal Poly, by also way of Washington. And then you have the one everyone is talking about, Connor, and that is your true freshman, Hassan Longstreet, a 5-star signee out of the 2025 cycle, number 28 overall and the number 4 quarterback by our rankings. Overall, it's a fun, interesting room to look at. You have that big, 5-star in there. You have a former 5-star, a veteran kind of guy who his college career hasn't gone the way. And then you have Jayden, who a lot of talent, but still question marks. But with Sam and Hassan, what kind of stands out about those 2 guys joining this room?
Well, I think there's going to be a backup quarterback battle this spring, which will be interesting to watch. Remember when Malachi Nelson came in and thought he was just going to back up Caleb Williams? I don't think Hassan Longstreet is thinking similarly. Of course, that's what he wants to do, but I don't think he is thinking right now, like, I'm 100% going to be the backup. He's going to have to earn that against Sam Heward. So that, to me, is sort of the first little domino to fall for Hassan Longstreet, which I think is interesting. And he certainly has the tools and the ability to win that backup job. But that would be something that would be significant to me because the last 5-star freshman quarterback that USC had, Malachi Nelson, he was not able to win that backup job. So that would show that Longstreet is on a different trajectory if he is able to win that backup job. Now, Nelson was going up against Miller Moss, who was more established and had been in college for a long time, like Heward, but more established at USC. So it's a little bit different, but I do think that would be significant. And I'm excited to cover this backup quarterback battle, Chris. Do you think that Longstreet could push for the starting job? I maybe could see that at the end of the season, but to me, it is just a little bit too early to be talking about him really pushing Jayden Maiava. I think don't rule anything out, but that's sort of how I see it all stacking up.
Yeah, I can't say it can't happen.
Yeah.
Like, I just won't say that it will never not happen.
Never say never.
But that is going to be one of the big talking points this whole offseason is Hassan Longstreet. Hassan Longstreet, 5-star quarterback. He can beat Jayden out. He could beat Jayden out. And while, yes, he's a 5-star, he's got a rocket arm too. He has the skill set to do so and be a really good quarterback at the college level. From people that we talk to, it seems like he still needs development. He is still kind of raw in some aspects. And I know he went to Centennial, Matt Logan there, one of the best coaches, high school coaches in the country. I still think Hassan needs more seasoning. And that's why you said at the end of the season, maybe we'll see something at the end of the season. Look, Hassan has shown that he is pretty serious about getting his college career off to a good start. He was practicing with the team for Las Vegas Bowl practices. He was already, in that playbook. He was already on campus. He was already getting a feel for the team. I'm not going to say he can't do it, but from what I understand, it's going to take some time. So this is really a backup battle between Hassan Longstreet and Sam Heward. Now, Sam Heward is interesting. Did not play last season at Utah. I don't think there was a specific, but an upper body injury that, knocked him out for the season. And then the year before that, he was at Cal Poly where 2,200 yards, 18 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. That's not a great number, but he started at Cal Poly. And again, former 5-star quarterback out of Washington. From what our understanding is, he's going to come in here and compete. And I think that's what you want from a guy you're picking up who's kind of, at the end of his college career, good pedigree. Obviously, Luke Heward is his uncle. So there's an interesting dynamic in that quarterback room. Again, just a very interesting room that's going to be to follow as you follow Jayden's development, this backup quarterback battle, a 5-star, and then, your uncle's kind of your coach. So this is a really interesting group. But yeah, I back to your original point, I think it's going to take some time before we see Hassan really start to push for that QB1 job.
I'll say this too. I think worst case scenario, if you have to go to the third string quarterback, I'd feel better about whoever the third string quarterback is this season than I would with Jensen, I think, last season. So from a depth perspective, I think the room has been upgraded. And we'll see. Heward, he's kind of like that mystery box. He's the 5-star talent. He wasn't great at Cal Poly, sat out last season, but he was a 5-star for a reason. And on paper, he should have the tools and has the ability to push for that backup job. So I think that's probably the most, outside of like if they go get another quarterback, I don't know if there's someone on the roster who can push Maiava to be the starter. I think they'll have to go outside the program to do that. So the most intriguing battle among these three guys is that backup job.
I like that description, mystery box. He's like the old veteran. You don't know what he has up his sleeve. What's he going to do? I don't know. So that's an interesting dynamic there. So you got a really young, talented guy. You got an old, former 5-star, fresh 5-star. Just an interesting room overall. Let's move on to our little section here of strengths and weaknesses. Now, again, strengths and weaknesses of this position group as it goes into spring camp. And everything that we talk about is in the context of spring camp. So when we talk about new faces, it's only going to be about guys who are in there for spring camp moving forward. So these guys will both be on campus, so they are eligible to be talked about in this segment. But Connor, what is your perceived strength for the quarterback room going into spring?
Well, to start, the returning starter piece is significant, and then having a 5-star freshman is significant. So I think those are two strengths on the surface. We can get into more specifics. How much do you like the returning starter? Is the 5-star freshman ready to be the backup? Those are two questions that are understandable for USC fans, but take it at face value. Bringing back your starting quarterback under Lincoln Riley, that's usually a good thing. And then with Lincoln Riley recruiting that 5-star freshman, that's been pretty consistent what he's been able to do on the recruiting trail at that position. So I start there with the two strengths.
I kind of feel like we have kind of similar things. I had talent potential because you saw what Jayden can do when he plays at the high level for Lincoln Riley. Hassan Longstreet, 5-star guy, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Rocket arm, has the skill set you want. And then Sam Heward, as we mentioned, a former 5-star himself. So there is talent in that room. We just don't know how it's all going to fit together in the same in a way for 2025. But yeah, I kind of feel like we're talking about the same thing. But yeah, that's a great point too. Having a guy who started for Lincoln Riley in 2024 back in 2025, that's incredibly valuable for Lincoln Riley and just any team in general, having a guy who started games for you and is obviously still learning the system and will have another full offseason for that.
I totally agree with you. Now they just got to go out and let's see what it looks like, because what did Chad Bowden say when we had that Q&A sit down with him last week? We're going to really evaluate the roster in the spring. That's going to be that new personnel staff's first chance to look at the players, look at a lot of the new faces, and all those personnel staff guys are new, so they'll get impressions of players. They'll mix in what they do on the practice field with what they've shown on tape in the past, and if they feel like they can upgrade the roster from someone in the portal, they're not going to hesitate to do it. Bowden did say, too, he feels like USC is incredibly close to having a really successful program and getting it done in the bigger games. It's not easy just to go out and replace a quarterback, but I wonder, is that one of those little tweaks that really Bowden thinks can get USC over the hump? And remember, when he was at Notre Dame and Riley Leonard was in the portal, Leonard committed to Notre Dame like this. He entered, and then it was a done deal. So I'm sure stuff's going on behind the scenes, too, if USC is looking at that route, taking a transfer QB.
That's why this is a big spring. This is Chad's first look at the roster out there on the field. So it's going to be interesting to see what those takeaways come back with after, several weeks of camp. Let's move on to the weakness. I'll kick it off. I just have developmental question marks. Like, that is the big thing that's holding Jayden back from being a great quarterback at this level for USC. Obviously he's a gunslinger, is going to make some of those plays that make you want to rip your hair out, but then he has some plays that's going to make you run up and down the aisle at the Coliseum. So raising the floor, that's the key for him. Like, can't have it so high and so low. Just raise that floor up, and USC is going to be a much better offense with him, given his skill set and what he can bring to the offense. So developmental question mark, that's the big thing, and which is obviously the key to USC season is having a good quarterback and a good quarterback that can, get you those big plays, tighten the fourth quarter. And, we saw what happened in the Notre Dame game, 2 bad pick sixes, they had a chance to win that game. And then, but you saw, even though he had a crappy game in the Las Vegas Bowl, he made the plays at the end. So I think, I don't know, I kind of look at that Las Vegas Bowl game and I think there's something there. There's some momentum, there's some confidence you can get after having it ending like that, after being terrible. Like Connor, if I have a terrible podcast for all the thing and I come back with some great points in the end, I'm feeling good for the next one I go to. So I think there's something to be said about how they ended with that comeback with Jayden, making plays down the stretch. But again, developmental is my big question mark or weakness for this group.
Great point about raising the floor. Remember in that Nebraska game, Maiava threw the pick six, and then he had that fumble where he was just trying to do too much. You can hopefully coach that out of him. So I agree. For my weakness, I put down, you can like Jayden Maiava and still not feel great about the room. I think in year 4 of Lincoln Riley, it's not unfair to say there should be a quarterback who is a sure thing going into year 4. So college football is crazy. The Malachi Nelson evaluation didn't work. And if you have to sit for a while, even if he was better, Nelson, there's a chance that he wouldn't be here because you just want to transfer to go play. So I understand it's really challenging now to stack quarterbacks. The days of what happened at USC with Matt Castle backing up Matt Leinart and never playing at all, and then the Patriots draft him, and he has maybe the most successful NFL career out of any quarterback on that roster. If you're a Matt Castle now, you're not sticking around because you're going to go play in the portal. So it's hard to put too much blame on Riley, but I do think if you went in a time machine and went back when Riley was hired and you asked fans, who is the quarterback going to be a Heisman contender going into this 4th season, whoever it is, everyone would say yes, because they always are. Maiava could get there, but he's not quite there on March 10th.
Yeah, really good points. Really good points, Connor. So let's move into kind of our second to last thing, just final thoughts. And this is kind of where we give our early starter projections. And if you've been listening, we feel like Jayden is going to be the starter. But let's get a little interesting here. What is your early projection on that backup quarterback? Is it Hassan Longstreet? Is it Sam Hurd? What are your early feelings, knowing really nothing? We haven't seen anything right now. So these are just the very early gut feelings.
Gut feeling, Maiava starter, Longstreet wins the backup job, but nothing is decided in the spring. Riley never decides anything at the quarterback position in the spring anyway, so that would be a shock if he came out and said, Hassan earned it today on April, whatever. That's not going to be decided until fall camp. But when Hurd was brought in, I know he has some upside, but the recruiting pitch to him was, what this is. You're going to come in, and if you play, that's probably not a great position for us to be in. We want to get Maiava to reach his ceiling. We have a really good freshman. Can you just come in and improve the room? So I think Longstreet has a leg up in that regard, but he has to earn it on the field. It's not going to be a situation where he's just given the backup job. So Hurd is certainly capable of winning that job, but I think it's going to go to Longstreet.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I do think Hurd will push more than I think fans initially expect him to push. Obviously, he comes from a quarterback family. His uncle is the quarterback's coach. I think he can pick up the offense faster than we would believe him to be able to pick up. But it all comes down to, that I don't know what the injury was last year. Is he going to be fully cleared to start spring or whatever? So just knowing that injury question aside, I'm going to lean with the 5-star, the fresher 5-star in Hassan Longstreet, and Jayden Maiava is the starter, barring anything crazy that happens. But again, it's just the early spring look. So Jayden, Hassan, and Sam Hurd, that is kind of our early kind of look at it for overall. And now the end of our little segments here, I kind of want to throw this in, barring time limits, and we're making pretty good time, Connor. There's only 3 guys to really talk about, but we're doing one question. So I solicited questions on social media, and we're going to do one question about the position group to end things out. So I got a question here from Todd Pierce. It is, how short of a leash will Lincoln Riley have with Jayden Maiava? Could we see a Rattler-Caleb situation with Longstreet? Interesting question. What will the leash be like with Jayden, and will we have some sort of Caleb Rattler situation. If you don't know, Spencer Rattler was a starter for Lincoln Riley. Caleb Williams was the incoming freshman, and there was kind of all this talk, like, can he beat him out? And then obviously they went to the switch for the Red River shootout, and Caleb had the incredible comeback, and the rest was, history. So is that a possibility? I think no, initially, because I feel like Caleb was higher rated, more polished coming out of high school than Hassan Longstreet. He was more ready-made. Like, if Spencer wasn't there, I feel like Caleb would have had a clear path to being a starter, freshman starter, day one. I don't think Hassan Longstreet is that kind of level yet. But the leash, I feel like if we're talking about, the comments Lincoln Riley made last year about Miller Moss and this QB controversy, he gave him a pretty long leash until the end there. So I think Jayden's not going to have a short leash. I think he's going to have a decently long leash. Not the longest leash, but I think he'll give him some runway to kind of fight through some stuff and, get that confidence and kind of stabilize as a quarterback as you move through the season.
If the room stays as it is right now, I think the leash is going to be very long. And that's because just look at how the schedule sets up. Unless Maiava plays terribly against Missouri State, Georgia Southern, Purdue, Michigan State, one of those games, he is going to stay in there because it does not make any sense to go, hey, Maiava, you didn't play very well these first 4 games. Now, Longstreet, we're going to throw you in. And then the meat of the schedule starts at Illinois versus Michigan at home, at Notre Dame, at Nebraska. That 4-game stretch is hard for any quarterback. That would be hard for Caleb Williams, never mind a true freshman who would be making their debut potentially if after those 4 games it doesn't look good. So I think the soft start of the schedule shouldn't be too challenging for Maiava, so there really shouldn't be any issue unless something crazy happens that would require him to be replaced. And then if for whatever reason he does need to be replaced, I don't think a true freshman starting those 4 games in the middle of that schedule gives you the best chance to win. So I think his leash will be really long unless, of course, there's an injury, obviously, or USC makes a move in the portal.
Yeah, it would have to be like complete meltdown, like total, like we have no choice but to make it. And I don't think we're going to see anything like that. And yeah, the first part of that schedule is going to be for Jayden to get the confidence up, get on a roll, and then, fire off into the meat of that schedule, as Connor said. And again, Hassan Longstreet is good, but I'm not saying he's like a generational, like number 1 overall kind of guy. He's not the Bryce Underwood kind of level guy, but he is a 5-star and he's talented. But again, from what we've heard, he still needs some time to develop. So you don't want to like prematurely just put him in there, and that could ruin a quarterback's confidence. But if you've been listening, it's Jayden Maiava show, we feel like, in 2025, Connor. So I think that's a good place to end with our quarterback preview. It's going to be interesting room. It's going to define USC's 2025 season if Jayden can make the jump to, okay quarterback, pretty good quarterback, has those moments, to a more consistent, great quarterback. And if so, USC might have something cooking in this season. So, Connor, anything you want to say before we get out of here?
I'll just end with this. If USC did go with a different quarterback, say Longstreet has this amazing spring and then an amazing fall camp, and he somehow beats out Maiava, I think what makes the most sense would be to start the new quarterback for those first 4 games because it's a softer landing zone. You don't want to make a change in the middle of this schedule, maybe at the end, but then at the end, it's UCLA, at Oregon, Iowa. I'm going in reverse order. It's just a challenging slate. So Maiava should use those first 4 games to really lock the starting position down. And if there are any question marks about him after those first 4 games, does it even make sense to make a change? So the schedule sets up in a very unique way where if there is a different quarterback, I feel like the best move would be to start that different quarterback at the beginning of the season. But hey, I don't get paid the big bucks to make those decisions. That's just my opinion. I do think it's going to be Maiava.
And I do want to say, Gerard has made this point on Composite 2-Star Recruits when we were asked about Hassan Longstreet beating out Jayden Maiava in spring. Lincoln Riley wouldn't necessarily want that because that doesn't speak to his ability to develop Jayden. And then you would have a giant, again, like Connor said, nothing is decided. Lincoln Riley does not really decide anything in spring. So, like, he would never, I don't think he would ever, like, oh, Hassan Longstreet, starter after the spring showcase, whatever. So it would be a bad sign if Jayden isn't, clear cut the guy moving forward. So that wouldn't be a great thing for him and for Lincoln Riley and for, I guess, you don't want to start a freshman quarterback here when you got a guy who has starting experience. So it just wouldn't be a good look if, Hassan Longstreet just straight up beats him in spring, assuming, he's not like playing it like number 1 overall pick kind of status. So, it's a very difficult thing to balance because then Jayden would probably leave. And then you have to find another quarterback. And then it's just a whole can of worms. You want Jayden Maiava to be the guy this spring. I think that is the best path forward for USC if Jayden makes the jump and develops. And again, we're going to get our first glimpse in Spring Camp 2025, Connor.
Let's end with this, Chris. Percentage chance that USC goes out and gets a quarterback in that spring portal. Remember, the guys who have had success historically have always transferred before the spring. It would be an almost unprecedented move.
I mean, it can't be 0 because you never know what's going to happen. And this is Chad Bowden's first, takeover. Has been pretty aggressive. Maybe he makes that move. 10%?
I'm going to say 5.
Okay. A little bit better than me, but yeah. We're under 10 is our base point. So, Connor, thank you for talking quarterbacks with me. Check out the rest of our previews that will be coming out over the next couple of weeks as we build up to spring camp. But quarterbacks out of the way, Connor, and I'll catch you on our next one.
Sounds good.